Unlike in other previous arcs where some members of the Straw Hat Pirates were only given minor screen time or not really focused on by Oda, this Elbaf arc seems to be changing that scenario because each member of the Straw Hat Pirates now has their own storyline. And yes, that's exactly what we're going to discuss in this video, the relevance of each member of the Straw Hat Pirates in the Elbaf arc. But before we start this topic, let's first talk about what I meant regarding the Straw Hat Pirates members who were not really focused on by Oda in past arcs. Since there are now 10 members of the Straw Hat Pirates, it's really hard to give each of them an individual storyline or focus on them one by one when the number of chapters in one arc is limited. That's why, if you notice, Oda's usual formula for an arc is to split the Straw Hat Pirates into 2 or 3 groups. Just like what happened in the Egghead Island arc, where Oda split the Straw Hat Pirates into 2 groups. One above, led by Zoro, and one below, led by Luffy. Another classic example is in the Whole Cake Island arc. Oda intentionally did not let some Straw Hats join. That way, we could focus on only a few Straw Hat members for that arc. That's why we saw Zoro and others leave early and go to Wano. So those are just some of the techniques Oda uses, so we don't get confused about which characters to follow in his story. Now, let's move on to what's happening in the Elbaf arc. Currently, there have only been 25 chapters produced for this arc, but it's very noticeable that each member of the Straw Hat Pirates is truly being given their own highlight by Oda. Let's start with Brook. The storyline Oda is portraying for Brook is his connection with one of the Holy Knights named Genku. During chapter 1147, Oda gave us a hint that Brook seems to recognize Genku. Later on, during chapter 1149, it was revealed that Brook and Genku do indeed know each other. Their timeline of meeting was before Brook became a pirate, meaning this was around 52 years ago, since that's when we first learned Brook was a member of the Rumbar Pirates. The next Straw Hat Pirate with a storyline in the Elbaf arc is Frankie. In chapter 1138, Ripley revealed to Frankie something about the Elbaf mural. So technically, Frankie is the only Straw Hat who currently knows about this hidden mural. Aside from that, Frankie also saw an ancient robot owned by Elbaf. Unlike the ancient robot on Egghead Island, which is said to be 900 years old, this robot Frankie saw is said to be nearly 3,000 years old, meaning this is the oldest recorded robot in One Piece history. So now this makes us ask, why, of all the Straw Hat Pirates, did Oda intentionally let Frankie be the one to see this robot? Could this be foreshadowing that Frankie will be the modern robot to ally with the current Joy Boy? If the Sun God has the ancient robot of Elbaf, then maybe the new Joy Boy, Luffy, will have Frankie as his robot companion? Anyway, the next Straw Hat member currently getting focus is obviously Nico Robin. Out of all the Straw Hat Pirates, Robin is arguably the one with the deepest connection to the Elbaf arc. Because aside from Saul, who has a deep history here, this is also where the old library is located, a library that contains some of the saved books from Ohara. But if you think Robin's role in this arc will be purely technical, then you're wrong, because she also showed that she can fight for the sake of the books she deeply treasures. Next is Usopp. Even before the Elbaf arc started, or even before it was revealed that there would be an Elbaf arc, I'm sure many of you already thought this arc would be Usopp's. Since back in the Little Garden arc, he already declared that he wanted to go to Elbaf. Plus, it's also related to his dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea. That's why, even before this arc began, our expectations for Usopp's character were already very high. We thought that in Elbaf, he would prove he can overcome his cowardice. And yes, I still believe in that part. Especially since in the last chapter, we saw his eagerness to help the ones he considers his masters, Brogy and Dory. I think this is where Usopp will show his courage as he faces his 2 masters who have now turned into demons. As for Chopper, he was also recently given a highlight by Oda, which was when he saved Skopper Gobbin. Aside from that, there's also what I mentioned in a recent chapter about the possibility that Chopper will help Loki by giving him a super recovery drug. And because of the current situation where several giants have turned into demons, it's very likely that before this arc ends, we'll see many injured giants. And I think this is where Chopper's role as a doctor will shine. Lastly, let's talk about Jinbei's relevance in the Elbaf arc. In the recent chapter, the hybrid form of Gillingham was revealed. And based on fan theories, it's possible that Gillingham has fishman blood. Since, yes, based on his appearance, he has traits of a fishman. His look is like a mix of Dellinger and Charlie. So if it's true that Gillingham is a fishman, then this is where Jinbei's storyline comes in. A fishman who fights against racism among his kind, and a fishman who instead chooses to do evil. Anyway, when it comes to our monster trio along with Nami, these four are the most prominent characters in every arc. Oda has never failed to highlight them in every arc. So we can definitely expect Oda to highlight them again in the Elbaf arc. We only tackled the other Straw Hat members here because we all know they tend to be more passive in an arc. That's why it's great to see that in the Elbaf arc, each of them is finally being given attention by Oda. So what about you? What do you think the storyline of each Straw Hat pirate will be in the Elbaf arc? If you have thoughts or ideas, don't be shy to comment them below so we can talk about them. That's all.